And instead of drifting, we rolled. And my arm flew out of the ATV and was crushed by the roll bars and was severed. So I was in this, we're in the dunes. It was 9 o'clock at night. There's no reception. And my hand, my dominant hand was just literally off. I was holding it in my other hand. And so there was a lot that happened. But the thing that I always say is it was the accident that saved my life, because it kind of woke me up. It was like I had literally always wanted to die. I had been suicidal, but I had never tried to take my life.
Mm-hmm.
But laying there with my hand off, bleeding, and having to be life flighted and all of the things, I suddenly wanted to live. I wanted to figure out how to live, and I wanted to figure out how to live well.
What's up, you beautiful beasts? I'm Katie. I'm on a mission to help humans become their favorite versions of themselves and to strive for overall health by healing their relationship to food and exercise, healing their relationship to their body, and most importantly, healing their relationship to themselves, all without ever having to step on a scale. I have had the privilege to talk to all kinds of different humans who have been through a plethora of experiences just being a human and existing. I believe that every single time someone shares their story, at least one person listening will learn from it, be inspired by it, and maybe, just maybe, even change the entire direction of their life. These are the stories of humans unveiling their beautiful beast. Keep listening. This is the Unveiling the Beast podcast. That's amazing. Sandra, not
Yes,
Sandra. Okay, because in my head I was saying Sandra Jarvis. Sandra Jarvis.
Sandra, yes. I mean,
Cool. Well, hi, Sandra.
hi there. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's
I
nice to
am
meet
good. Yes, I'm really excited to be here. And
you. Me too.
I've been listening to the podcast actually for the past few days, and I love it. I love your podcast. It has
Thank you.
been really fun to listen to some of the stories of people who've been on. So,
Yeah. Which ones did you listen to? Just curious.
well, I just actually hit play on the last episode and started listening, and I think I've gotten through about six of the last, so the most recent. Um,
Okay.
I couldn't tell you names, but
No, that's
the
fine. That's fine.
guy that was in prison, I listened to his, and
Mm,
the rheumatoid arthritis lady. I have
hmm
arthritis too, so that resonated with me. And the lady with the kidney transplant.
Yeah, Jen.
So I literally just hit play and started listening, and it's been really interesting to hear some of the stories. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
keep listening.
that's awesome.
So,
So far up to this point, it's just been anybody and everybody telling their stories.
uh-huh.
And then my most recent post on the Facebook Need a Guest group, um, is it's still going to be stories, but I'm honing in more on the people that I work with as far as like health is concerned. So,
Oh,
sleep,
okay.
nutrition, all the stuff that I don't even remember what I listed in there. So, but mental health being one of them. And if I remember correctly, you help women with trauma. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
Yeah, I am a trauma recovery coach. I've been coaching for 8 years, and I work with women who have just all kinds of trauma. Honestly, my favorite clients are the ones who come to me and are just totally victim,
Mm,
and they just feel like there's no hope left in their lives.
yeah.
Because those are the people I relate with really well. I was there, and I know I have the tools to help them. And it's just so rewarding to be able to work with them and watch them as they change and they see the light again, literally.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it is work that I love to do. And I got into because of my own trauma and my own history with trauma. And so yeah, so it is really powerful work. And I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I just recently, 'cause I've been doing a lot of just personal development work myself over this last year and a half or so. And I've discovered that I know I have trauma. I was in an abusive relationship with a drug addict. Um, and I'm realizing that my life has been so much more full of trauma, and somehow
Mhm.
I've like put on the blinders.
Right.
Because in my head, trauma is only like, you get punched in the face, you
Right.
mentally abused and all that. But like, there's so much from like I've been doing inner child work too, and
Yeah.
there's so much that we don't even consider trauma until we realize the impact that it has on our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the thing that's um so interesting to look at. Like I often say, people say, who do you work with? And I'm like, well, anyone in the world post-pandemic has
Yeah,
trauma, right?
yeah,
Because literally, I mean, the pandemic created so many situations, the fear of, when none of us knew what was happening.
yeah,
The isolation created trauma for people who actually got sick and had to go into hospitals where there was the workers, the nurses, and the doctors and the first responders. I mean, we all were so severely impacted by that I don't think people even recognize how much that created trauma in all of us.
yeah,
But then on top of that, it's the little things. I mean, even just our childhood conditioning is, for many of
yeah,
us, that's traumatic and we don't recognize it because it's just who we are. It's just how we were raised or. But when
yeah,
you really start looking at the things that shaped you and created who you are, and I mean, there are so many things that can be traumatic. And my husband and I last night, actually, as we were going to bed, we were talking, and he brought up when he was in, I think it was fourth grade, he was punched in the face by a kid at the bus stop.
mm,
He to this day, I mean, my husband's 60 years old, and to this day, he carries that trauma with him. And we started talking about it last night, and I didn't realize how much it still affected him. But, that's been, I don't know, 50 years ago. And
yeah,
and he is still carrying around this wound from this single incident that he can give you every single detail and all the ways that people reacted and how it made him feel, and then we connected it to things that he does now that we had never really seen, and it was just a really powerful thing to look at. Like,
yeah,
our traumas don't just go away, they
right.
literally follow us and they shape our lives until we are willing to look at them, to become aware of them, and to, figure out, how do I let this go? How do I release this so that I
Yeah,
can become who I was meant to be?
yeah,
And so, yeah, I am really passionate about
yeah,
it.
yeah. And so my business is Beautiful Beast Within Studios, and the what is it slogan is unveil the beautiful beast within you. And the veils are these like traumas, micro traumas, programming, everything
Yeah,
that covers up who the real you is. And like
right.
it was weird. I was going through these because I'm planning on making a cheesy video with putting veils on my head. Don't ask. Coming soon to a YouTube channel near you. But specific events that have happened in my life where I put on a veil and I made a decision about the world in that moment.
Mhm.
And so getting through like getting help or talking to a coach or a therapist or something helps you remove these layers and like figure out who you really are as a
Right.
human, and like which of these layers came from you, which of these came from the outside world or your experiences. And so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so true. And that, and I think it's interesting what you said, it's like there are so many people who still see trauma as the big events
Mm-hmm.
and just don't even recognize, that I'm actually currently in conversation with a woman who is really, really struggling with just life. And she came to me and she's like, well, I don't really have any trauma. And then she started telling me about her life. I was like, oh, you actually have a lot of trauma, and people just don't recognize it. And I think that, it's not that everything is trauma,
Right.
but if it is traumatic to you, it doesn't matter what it seems like to anyone else. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if it created something in you that was harmful, then it's trauma. Then it's trauma for you. And that doesn't mean that it would be traumatic for someone else, but I just think it's really important to recognize that it's okay to say, no, this was really hard for me. This was really harmful to me.
Yeah.
And I need to look at it closer and see what it did, what it left behind.
Yeah.
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 So,
And it can come in any shape or form. I don't know why this came to me, but this summer I took my son to a water park. He's 7,
mhm.
and he went on the same slide in the kids area like 5 times in a row. And the last time he went, he decided to sit up, and he ended up going backwards. He got water up his nose,
Oh,
and he came. I saw him coming towards me from this slide, and I was like, "Oh, something happened. I know something's wrong." Like we kind of know. And at that moment, this like side note, there's this giant bucket that fills up with water that splashes down on people every once in a while. And we avoid that bucket because that water comes down hard. So rewind, he's coming to me. I know something's wrong, and that bucket's about to.
oh no.
It's not funny, but just what it felt. I felt like I was watching it in slow motion.
Right.
And so he comes out. He's got this. Oh my! Like I could see something's wrong, and then this damn bucket falls on his head, and he's like, "We're done. I'm leaving. Let's go." And we left. And I was like, but I'm thinking, as a coach, I'm like, this child just went through something traumatic,
Yeah.
and it
It's
was.
yeah. It's
But
true.
he, nobody punched him or like it wasn't. He wasn't in. I don't know. I don't know. It seemed maybe it's a big one now that I say it out loud, but I don't
Yeah, well, I mean, those are the kind of things. And I think for me, like the definition of trauma that I go off of is that it's anytime something is too much, too fast, or too little, too late for
know.
your personal development, And so it's that thing of it really depends on him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that something that his little 7-year-old nervous system could handle? you know or is that something that he's going to carry with him, and like my husband, remember if when he's 60 be like,
Yeah.
yeah, bucket, you know
Man.
and it's just one of those things, somebody else might not react to it at all, but it could be trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a it's an interesting thing, and the more I have learned about it as I've gone through my own trainings and my own healing, there is just so much, that we store in our bodies and that
Yeah.
we carry with us, and it creates so many problems that we just don't even recognize. And I think, historically we have treated the mind and the body as these separate entities,
Yeah.
which is just crazy when you really stop and think about it, but it's like the things that happen that are traumatic literally live in our bodies and create physical problems. And until we get, as a society, get to the point that we recognize it's like, no, this is real, you know,
Yeah.
not in our heads. It's not, you know, these are real problems. And I think that that's part of the problem that I've seen is, you know, I have clients who come to me and they have real things going on, and they've been told repeatedly that, you know, well, it's in your head, or it's not, that's not real, or why are you being such a baby about it, or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's like, it, we have to believe people. That's it. Their experience gets to be whatever it is.
Yeah.
And believing them and then helping them through it. It's like that's the key to healing for all of us.
Hmm.
So
I love that you mentioned the mind body connection.
yeah,
Uh, like I work with people who have lost that connection through diet culture and spent having a lifetime of listening to outside sources tell them what their body needs rather than,
really, yeah,
figuring it out on their own. I mean, like, get a basic nutrition education like we get in elementary school, but just like probably like the fad diets or like the quick fixes or the magical pills that people want, and that completely separates the mind and the body, in my opinion.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
And that is, I mean, that the mind body connection is so powerful. And I think it's something that it was lost. Like it's, you know, I think it's coming, people are
yeah,
starting to recognize it again. But I know that for me, with all of the trauma that I had, I was completely disconnected, you know, and it's I didn't even know how to reconnect. Like I knew that I was disconnected, but it seemed impossible to even figure out how to start hearing my body again, start being
yeah,
connected to it, you know, and I think that's a real thing. I mean, I too, like I grew up in the 80s and, you know, there was the grapefruit diet where you only ate grapefruit for 30 days and the
yeah.
boiled egg diet and the the cabbage
Cabbage
diet.
soup.
You know, all of those
Yeah,
things. And yeah, they're so harmful and they create such a disconnect. And I think that there are a lot of people who are still dealing with that to this
yeah,
day.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them are normalized. Like there's a huge group of people out there that think that carbohydrates are the devil, and I'm like, your brain kind of needs them to function properly. Or,
Yeah.
back in the 90s, it was low fat everything. And then people were wondering why they had nutrient deficiencies because they didn't have the fat in their body to help properly absorb the nutrients. And it's like, and there's, it's almost like the fads become people's reality as truth.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off.
Yeah, I bet being a
That's
nutrition.
my trauma.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting though, because I mean, it's something that I've struggled with for a lot of my life. But the thing is that there are so many different voices out there
Yeah.
telling you, well, oh, this is the thing, right? The new research, this is it, or, you know, whatever. And it's like, I finally realized that it doesn't matter what anybody else says. I have to figure out what works for my body, like
Yes.
literally. And it
Mhm.
might be completely different than what works for your body.
Yeah.
That's okay. I have to learn to trust myself. I have to learn to listen to me and make that the thing that is important for me, right? You know,
Yeah.
and that's just going to be different for everyone. And I think that's a really hard message to accept because it's not what we hear. You know,
Right.
like there's so many experts with all the answers, and
Yeah.
it's really easy to chase all of that.
Yeah, that's another thing is a lot of fitness influencers who mostly post like body shots and
Right.
what I eat in a day videos that imply if you eat like me, you'll look like me. And we all have
Yeah.
different genetics. That's not going to happen. But a lot of these influencers have no education in nutrition. They have no education in body movement science. And they're just kind of spewing out what they hear on the internet. And then
Yeah.
we take it because they have, 100 million followers. We're like, oh, well, then they must be spouting the truth. Let me take
Right.
this piece of information and apply it to my life. Oh, crap. Why don't I look like them?
Right. Right. Well, and not even to mention the fact that it's like they are posting pictures of themselves that have taken years and
Yeah.
years to curate. And it's literally curating.
Hmm.
And then they're trying to sell it as if, oh, any normal person can do this and look like me. And
Hmm.
it becomes very, the focus on body and society's obsession with body, supports that industry because it's like, oh, well, we're all supposed to look like that, aren't we? And so if they can do it, then why can't I do it? And I just think that's so harmful. It is so
Yeah.
harmful. Honestly, I think there's a lot of trauma in the world around the diet industry.
Yep. Yeah. And I love to, for the listeners, the next time you ask yourself if they can do it, how come I can't do it? Answer because you're a different human than they are. You have different genes, you have different DNA. I'm sure you have different eye color, hair color, you know,
Right. Yeah,
boobs,
exactly.
everything.
Everything.
You're not
Yeah.
them. That's why you don't look like them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's true. Well, and even, I mean, genetically, but then even too, it's like your experiences are different.
yeah,
I mean, literally, the trauma that you have is different from them, and trauma affects your body in different ways. I mean, it's like there are so many pieces that go into what makes up who we are that there's just no way that anyone is going to be exactly the same, you know?
yeah.
And I don't know, I've been geeking out on the newest research in generational trauma. And
Mm,
I mean, if we go into that, then that brings in a whole nother layer of who we are and how the DNA that is passed on from generation to generation that is filled with their trauma. And it's like, I mean, there's just so much
yeah,
that we don't necessarily even know that is affecting us.
yeah.
And so it's not, there's no easy answer. There's no easy fix. So
Agreed.
yeah.
I'm gonna take a hard left or right,
Okay.
whichever direction you want to go in, or up. Let's go up.
Let's go up. I like that.
Um, are you open to sharing your story?
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. So I where to begin? Probably at birth.
I was born once.
I was born. I was actually born into a family that there was a lot of abuse. Um, I always say we didn't discriminate where abuse was concerned. So we were physical, emotional, sexual, spiritual, like we just had it all. And also we were part of a high demand religion. And so that really played into the idea of perfectionism. Like we were supposed to be perfect. Um, and if we weren't perfect, then we were punished for it.
Mm,
And so as a child, I got this idea that I had to prove that I was perfect. And
yeah.
um, there were a lot of things that were going on. And my earliest memories are of all of the abuse that happened and then trying to hide from all of the abuse. and trying to hide from really trying to hide who I was because I knew I wasn't perfect. And if I wasn't perfect, then I was going to be abused. Right. So it was just this
Yeah.
cycle of crap. And I came up with, like, at some point in probably in my early teenage years, I came up with this theory. I called it the big one. And I, I really truly believed that I was being given all of these challenges and all of these hardships in my life to prove that I was strong enough to handle it. And that someday there was going to be this huge trial that was going to come into my life. And that if I was able to make it through that, then everything was going to be perfect. And my life was just going to be smooth sailing from then on. And so I literally, I mean, from the time I was very young, I was facing life looking for this challenge. And now when I look back at that, it really makes me wonder how many, how much of my trauma was self-inflicted. Not that I was, that I was doing things to myself, but that
Right.
I just drew it to me because I was literally looking for it. Like, I'm looking for this huge, gigantic challenge, right? So, anyway, so I went through life that way for a very long time. I was in my teenage years, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and also with endometriosis, which were both very painful and lots of, things. And I know now we're probably both because of the trauma that I had suffered. But,
Yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. But anyway, so there was just a lot going on in my childhood. And so I married very young. And when I got married, I kind of thought that I was finally leaving behind all the abuse. And that was, like, it was really exciting for me. Like, I was like, I get to leave this.
Mm.
But I married a human, and so unfortunately, as humans do, he was not perfect, and neither was I, and so we continued to have some challenges. But we had 5 kids within the first 10 years of our marriage, and um, and that brought even more challenges, right? And like I said, I just kept looking for this thing that was going to finally ease up. So through that, like I said, I had 5 children, but I also had a miscarriage. Um, and I had the endometriosis, which was super, super painful. And I was dealing with the sexual abuse, which really became triggered when I got married. I knew that I had been abused, but I didn't realize how severely until I got married. And so all of that was triggered. And so life was, I was very, very depressed. I was suicidal at different points, and just, I just struggled. I mean, I was miserable. I literally used to tell people that I wasn't afraid of death because there was nothing that could be worse than life. so,
Oh.
so it was, I was really just not, I wasn't happy and I wasn't doing well. Um, but so all of that was going on. And then in 2012, excuse me, I was diagnosed with a rare form of salivary gland cancer and um, had to go through radiation treatments for that, which radiation treatments to the head is its own special type of torture
Mm.
because they're doing it so close to your brain that you have to be. I literally had a form-fitting mask that was bolted to a table while they did the radiation, and I happened to be claustrophobic, so that was really so. Anyway, so I was going through
Yeah.
radiation treatment, and um, on day 2 of my radiation treatment, my oldest son came out as gay, And at the time, we were very involved in a high demand Christian religion that was just a sin, right? And so
Yeah.
that was really a huge thing. So I'm dealing with my radiation. My son comes out as gay. And then my husband, a couple of weeks later, told me that he had had a lifelong pornography addiction. And my life it just felt like my life collapsed. And the entire family ended up in therapy, and we were doing all of these things that were, I'm not going to go there. But anyway, so it was 2012 was a really difficult year. I actually, on New Year's Eve that year, I gathered my family around a bonfire and I said, we're just going to burn the year. So everyone write down everything you can think of that you hated about 2012, and we're just going to burn it and leave it behind.
Yeah.
And then 2013 was worse. And then 2014, I we were kind of starting to come out of all of that. And we had a son graduating from high school, and he wanted to go ATV riding for his graduation trip, kind of, just a celebration. And so my husband and I and our two youngest kids went to the sand dunes in southern Arizona to ride ATVs. And my daughter and I rented a Polaris Razor, which is a side by side, like a dune buggy. And we did that because we didn't really have any experience riding ATVs, and we thought that was going to be safer because it was more like a car, and my son had quads and they were out riding and whatever. But my daughter was 15 at the time. She didn't have a driver's license, but you can drive an ATV. So I was teaching her to drive, and she was doing really well. And so I decided that I would teach her to drift. So drifting in an ATV, for those who don't know, it's when you're going fast and then you like flick the wheel so that the front tires stay in the same place and the back tires like flip around, right?
Mm-hmm.
I had successfully done this one other time and decided to teach my 15-year-old daughter, who'd never driven, how to do this. And instead of drifting, we rolled. And my arm flew out of the ATV and was crushed by the roll bars and was severed. So I was in this, we're in the dunes. It was 9 o'clock at night. There's no reception. And my dominant hand was just literally off. I was holding it in my other hand. And so there was a lot that happened. But the thing that I always say is it was the accident that saved my life, because it kind of woke me up. It was like I had literally always wanted to die. I had been suicidal, but I had never tried to take my life.
Mm-hmm.
But laying there with my hand off, bleeding, and having to be life flighted and all of the things, I suddenly wanted to live. I wanted to figure out how to live, and I wanted to figure out how to live well, because I was like, there's, I have this opportunity. I could give up right now.
Yeah.
And it just shifted my entire perspective. And so over the next 5 years, I had 20 surgeries and went through thousands of hours of physical therapy in order to reattach and repair my hand. And they did. I don't have full use of my hand, but I have probably about 80% of it. But through that experience, I was able to really see how much power I had over my own healing. And one of the things that whenever I was released from ICU, I was in ICU for 2 weeks. And when I was released, my surgeon came into me and he said, I've done everything I can do surgically to replace your hand. And he said, going forward, your results are going to be up to you. And what I heard in that was that if I worked hard enough, then I could have full use of my hand. And this was my right hand, like my dominant hand, And that was not what he meant, but it was what I heard. And so I went into everything like this is my job to save my hand. And for the next 5 years, I was 100% focused on healing my hand. And through that, I healed not just my hand, but all kinds of other things.
Yeah.
And I really saw the power that we have in how we react to life. Like we can literally choose to be miserable,
Mm-hmm.
or we can choose to see life as something amazing. And it's up to us. And that's not to minimize the very real, you know, mental illnesses and things that are out there. But it is to say that, most of it, I think, don't recognize how much power we have inside of ourselves to create the life that we want and to be able to be happy, to just be able to create a life where we can thrive. And so that was kind of what is interesting because before my accident, I had done 15 years of therapy and I was still so depressed and so suicidal and all of the things. And after my accident was when I discovered coaching. And the coaching was so much more powerful for me than therapy that was why I decided to become a coach and to work with specifically with women who had trauma because I hear all the time women who say therapy didn't work for me. And it's like,
Yep.
yeah, it didn't work for me either, but coaching did, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so I became a coach and the rest is history.
Wow. When you were talking about, was it 2012, the year that you burned?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and you told me about the mask that's bolted to the table. My sister had the same thing. She had small cell carcinoma of the larynx, and she
Okay.
had simultaneous radiation and chemo.
Yeah.
And she sent me a picture of her face bolted to the table. So when you were telling me that story of all this stuff happening to you,
Yeah.
I pictured you on this table in this mask while all this stuff is happening to you and you can't get up. I have a
Yeah.
wild imagination, but like because I've seen that mask, it made me claustrophobic looking at the picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so yeah. So I
No,
just wanted to
yeah. Well, and it felt that way, I'll tell you. It was kind of a crazy experience, but I mean, I was claustrophobic. These masks they literally take a piece of plastic and they heat it and then they push it over your face to create the mask. So it is form fitting. And whenever you're doing the radiation, if you lose too much weight, they have to remake the mask because you can
mm,
only have a quarter of an inch between you and the mask. So, like, that's how close fitting it is. It's like.
mm,
And it was during that time was I was having a hard time because I am claustrophobic. So I had to either do the radiation without any medication, any relaxing medication, or I had to have someone drive me to my radiation treatments every day. And this was every day for a couple of months.
yep.
And I didn't think I could do it without the medication. And so I wanted someone to drive me, and I couldn't find anyone to drive me. And finally, one of my siblings, who happened to be the sibling that sexually abused me, volunteered to bring me. And I was like, okay, I mean, we have a relationship, so. But it was really fascinating. I started doing it, the radiation, and I started having these massive panic attacks.
Mm,
And I didn't understand what was going on. And I finally ended up in therapy again. And And I
Yay,
told my
therapy.
therapist, yeah, I told my therapist what was going on. And he's like, so wait, let me get this straight. So you're going to a place where they're literally strapping you to a table and hurting you because the radiation is literally burning you, you know.
Right.
He's like, and your abuser is sitting in the lobby waiting for you. It's like, oh, when you put it that way, okay. You know, but it felt just like what you described. It was like I just felt like one thing after another was just being thrown at me. And I was like, I just don't even know how to handle this. And then going back to, you know, my theory, my big one theory, I was like, okay, this must be that one. This is the thing.
Mm,
And so I just have to be strong. I just have to get through it, you know. And I think the thing that's so interesting about that is that, I mean, I got through a lot in my life, a lot, but I did it by almost abusing myself
mm,
because I was so concerned about number one, being perfect, because I had to be perfect, right? And number two, just making sure that I was, you know, showing up and doing everything 100%. So that didn't leave any room for me to be human. It didn't leave any room for me to mourn the fact that I was dealing with cancer, you know,
yeah.
or that I had been severely abused and was, you know, having to deal with that, or even, you know, with my son coming out, and that was a big deal at the time. And he later came out as transgender and did a complete transition, and all of that happened within like 3 years. And it was just like what you said, it was like, yeah, just pin me down and throw things at me.
Yeah.
And it was really a heavy experience, a heavy weight is what it felt like. um, and I'm, you know, as I said, it's like understanding as I got out of that and started to see the power that I had. I felt like no one had ever even told me that I had a choice about the way that I felt about life or the way that I
Yeah.
felt about the things that were happening in my life. And that was such a huge revelation for me when I discovered coaching and the coaching concepts. I was like, everybody should know this. Everybody should understand that they can choose to be miserable if they want to, and that is a totally valid choice, but they don't have to. Like they can
Right.
also choose something else.
Yeah.
And it was just so life changing for me to see that. And so from there, I actually, there were a lot of things that happened, but ended up leaving our religion and our, my new analogy is that we're all perfect. We're just perfect. Like, and I believe that's really true. I think I am perfect. You're perfect. We are all perfect. We
Yeah.
are exactly who we were meant to be. And it has absolutely nothing to do with how much we do or what we experience or anything. It's like we were born into this world perfect and nothing can change that. And you know, that's something that I find really interesting because I that's what I teach my clients, and I get so much pushback from it because people are like, no, that's a lot of pressure. I'm like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, 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 no. If that's a lot of pressure, that you're not understanding, because the truth is you don't have to do anything. You just get to be.
Yeah.
And that is a beautiful concept.
That was a mic drop, by the way. So my
Yeah.
question for you would be like to wrap this up into the health conversation is how has healing your mind also healed your body?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll be honest, it's something I'm working on all the time. because my body has had a lot of health issues. And so, but the thing that I focus on the most is I have come up with 7 daily habits that whenever I follow them, I see my physical health just improve. And um, so that is really the thing that I look at is so they are so they're meditation. I meditate every day. I try to meditate morning and night, but I'll be honest, that nighttime one sometimes doesn't happen. Um, Drinking enough water is huge, and that is something that for me, like I didn't realize how big water was until I really started paying attention to my health. And I was like, wow, you can drink water and you can change so many things. So
Yeah.
I think I was chronically dehydrated for much of my life.
I'm gonna say cheers to that.
Yeah, well, here's mine. Water. And then sunlight, getting out into the sun and actually absorbing the sun has been a huge one. I actually live in Washington State, which is a little bit more difficult, but I actually find that even when there is no sun, if I'm outside, then I reap the benefits of that, you know. Um, Movement. And when I say movement, I'm not talking about exercise. I'm talking about
Yeah,
moving
just
the
moving.
body.
Yeah.
Yeah, just whatever that is, whether it's stretching or walking or doing a workout, but getting moved every day, um, trying to eat, according to what I know my body needs. And that's been a journey in and of itself to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, Having some sort of human connection every day, and then getting enough sleep. And those things have really become the foundation of everything for me. Like whenever I am doing those things, then I know that I can operate, kind of optimally in my physical body and my mental body. And I think that that's the thing, looking at it, it's so interesting to see how when I'm doing these things, like my brain fog is gone. I feel I have the energy, I have the creativity, I have all of the things that I need to run a business, to coach my clients, to get through the day. And it was really figuring out I mean, honestly, it all comes back to the mind body connection for me.
Yeah.
Because it's that whole thing. It's what I said. We've treated it for separate for so long, and the truth is, we're one machine.
Yeah.
And when we look at ourselves that way and focus on how do I take care of myself every day, how do I support myself every day, then it changes everything.
Agreed.
Yeah. I don't even know if I answered your question there,
You
but
did. No,
there
you
you
did.
go.
You did. Yeah. I love that. They're all similar to I have I'm calling them pillows of health now because it's our health is so much our health is our behaviors and habits.
Yeah.
People want to tell you that your health is the number on the scale, and that I call bullshit on that.
Yeah.
Your health is your behaviors and your habits. It has nothing to do with a number.
Right.
So anyway, but it's very similar. I have rest the beast, feed the beast, heal the beast, move the beast, pamper the beast, declutter the beast. What's the 7th one? Oh, connect the beast, human
Yeah.
connection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. They're very similar.
yeah, maybe I should add hydrate the beast.
It's true. I'll tell
Yeah.
you, it was really fascinating to me because I actually grew up in Arizona and lived there for most of my life. We moved to Washington just 4 years ago, and I I literally think that I was chronically hydrated living in Arizona and didn't
Mm,
realize it because I had lived there my whole life. And we came here, and I started really focusing on my water intake, and I was amazed at like my joints quit hurting. I had more energy, brain fog went away, like all this stuff. And all I changed was water. And I was like, I had no idea that water, I had always drank my 64 ounces.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, yeah, that's just not enough. I don't know who came up with that number, but it certainly isn't enough for me.
Yeah, it's different
So
for
yeah,
everybody. Yeah.
hydrate the beast. That's a good one.
Yeah. Love it. I do have one more question for you, and I ask everybody at the end of every episode.
Yes.
And that is, if you had one piece of advice that you could give to the world, what would it be?
My one piece of advice is to learn how to love yourself, learn how to see yourself as perfect, and to recognize that in that, it's not that if you believe that you're perfect, that doesn't give you permission to do nothing. When you believe you're perfect, it gives you everything you need to accomplish anything you want. And so shifting that, like focusing on seeing yourself as the most amazing person on the planet, because you're the most important person in your own life, and loving yourself as if you're the most important person is the most powerful thing that you can do. So that was my lesson coming out of my 5 years of surgeries, because I literally focused on myself for 5 years and realized how much power there was behind that. And not in a selfish way, but I often say, if everyone in the world would focus on their own needs first, there would be so much less suffering in the world.
Yeah.
And so shift your focus to yourself and see what that changes in your life.
Ladies and gentlemen, Sandra Jarvis signing off. Until next time.